All right, and we are on. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen, and any listeners or viewers tuning in to Burnin Rubber, the socially distanced edition. This version will go out on YouTube and Anchor.fm as well as Spotify in the near future. The recording date as of today is May 1st, 2020. My name is Sterling Siemens. I'm joined tonight by my regular co-hosts, Hallie Stepp and Justin Palmer. Fellas, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Fantastic. Justin?
Yeah, I got some new headphones for the show, so hopefully these things go off without a hitch, and we'll be good for tonight.
Awesome. In case you didn't notice, I did get a quarantine cut. I'm not going into the military or anything, but this does kind of make me look like a military hairstyle. I haven't had hair like this since I was in middle school. But enough about me, enough about quarantine cuts. Let's just go on to talking about racing. So let's hop to it. Starting with the first topic on our agenda, the weekend in review. The iRacing events that happened over the weekend. I'll start with the IndyCar event because that was on Saturday. It was a very interesting field, made up of a lot of different drivers, but the biggest takeaway, well, not really takeaway, but perhaps a bit of a surprise, Lando Norris, who drives for McLaren in Formula One, decided that he was going to run this race on Saturday for the IndyCar iRacing Challenge. And not only did he do really well at the virtual circuit of the Americas, he went out and won it. He won the race. He beat his McLaren teammate Pato O'Ward. It was a 1-2 finish for McLaren with Felix Rosenqvist in third, completing the podium with Scott McLaughlin and Santino Ferrucci rounding out the top five. It was an interesting show because it appeared that O'Ward was set to take the victory, but then I think it was O'Ward who spun off the course, and that allowed, or now that I think about it, it might have been Rosenqvist. I forget who it was specifically, but it allowed Norris to take advantage of the opportunity, and he went out and won the race. Hal, Justin, we've talked about how Lando Norris is really good on iRacing and virtual esports in particular. He seems to be an aficionado of sorts, but I want to start with Justin on this. We've seen how Scott McLaughlin, the supercar driver, has done really well on the IndyCar side. Lando Norris, I think it's safe to say he's not going to IndyCar because, I mean, he's got Formula One. But it is nice to see another driver from a different sport, or a different series at least, come over to another series and actually do really well. We saw it with Dale Jr. at Michigan. We've seen it with McLaughlin, and now we're seeing it with Lando Norris. What do you think about the future of Lando Norris?
I think that's going to have to do a lot with what happens to McLaren this offseason. Right now, McLaren is not in the best of situations, especially with the COVID-19 situation. But right now for IndyCar, it's a complete invasion going on. Right now, these guys are kind of getting their butts kicked against the outsiders, and the traditionalists are right now not doing too well on the iRacing circuit. And a lot of these guys are a lot younger, so the younger guys are definitely winning a lot more of these IndyCar races. That's kind of been across the board, or really with all three of the racing series. I mean, obviously, F1 is using F1 2019 for their racing, which we haven't covered, but anyway. But it just shows that there are some still good drivers out there on the F1 circuit that are just a little bit underfunded, that are still underfunded, and you still find these gems out there on the F1 circuit. So Lando Norris, hats off to you for taking advantage of the IndyCar series and winning at a circuit of the Americas. And that's also got to help Norris and every single one of the F1 drivers who decided to take part in the event. It's because that track is both for F1 and IndyCar. So not too big of a conversion, I would say, compared to like Dale Jr. Or Kyle Busch, or let's just say Kyle Busch at Tokyo at a Japanese racetrack on iRacing.
Hal Leestep, what are your thoughts on Lando Norris winning in IndyCar?
Justin's right. There is an invasion going on for IndyCar drivers. They're not all getting outclassed by these basically outsiders, but the one thing I noticed out of that top 5 is that those are all young guys. Simon Pagenaud had kind of been the older guy schooling all the younger guys on iRacing for a little bit there, but Lando Norris, only 20 years old, playing or racing at on a iRacing IndyCar for probably the first time against a lot of these guys, and he just schooled them. One thing that was also interesting is you point out how Pato O'Ward had spun out off the racetrack and gave Norris the lead. Norris had done that earlier in the race, so it was kind of interesting that it kind of came back for him. So he had a little bit of misfortune at the start, but persevered through it and won the race. So Lando Norris showed some poise out there on the iRacing circuit. And if he can keep up that poise in a real F1 car, first of all, he's a hot prospect at only 20 years old and finished 11th in McLaren equipment. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, for Lando Norris, I mean, I feel like his future is bright enough already as it is. Or I probably shouldn't say enough because it's pretty bright over at McLaren. I don't know if we've been keeping the best track of McLaren, but their progress from considering what they were able to do last year compared to years past, I feel like we're on the verge of seeing McLaren on a big breakthrough in performance once again. The last time
They might be top 4,
yeah,
or if they can get through this season.
I think they were top 4 last year in the Constructors Championship for Formula One. The last time we saw McLaren win a race was 2012. If I'm correct, I think Jenson Button was the last winner of a race for McLaren. I'll have to look that up. I know it was a year that Jenson Button and Lewis Hamilton were their drivers. So from McLaren, they have Carlos Sainz and they have Lando Norris. Both of them did really well. In fact, Sainz scored their first podium in a very long time last year at Brazil, I believe it was. So with Sainz and Lando Norris bringing in some really good points and finishing pretty high up in the constructor standings, considering where they had been before, it's got to be a good sign for McLaren. Now, obviously, with COVID-19 happening, that could throw a wrench into those plans. But, I mean, hey, hats off to McLaren and for what they've been able to accomplish. And then they're even expanding into IndyCar. So it'll be fun to see what they do there.
It's definitely going to be interesting with McLaren because they've been established in the sport for a while. It's not like a new team in like Haas coming in and having a major success. This has been one of the more established teams in the past decade or so. What's going to be interesting to see is, can they close that gap? Can they close that gap between the top 3, between Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes? Can they be that 4th team in that group to give F1 a little bit more parity going forward? And I think that's going to be an interesting question, not for 2020 necessarily, but probably beyond that if they can get through it.
Right. Absolutely. Moving on to the next race that happened, it was Alex Bowman who ended up winning the chaotic virtual Talladega race for the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational on Sunday in a 3-wide finish. Basically just, your average classic Talladega race. It featured a pretty spectacular crash by Jeff Gordon driving a second 24 car. Gordon ended up flying into the fence, and that was the end of his race. But yeah, 3 wide of the line, Alex Bowman beating out Corey LaJoie and Ryan Preece. in a thrilling finish. There's really, I feel like there's not really much to say about this race other than it was nice to see Jeff Gordon get in there, only to crash out in spectacular fashion. But
he stuck around a little bit after because that was like very early on in the race, and he used the reset. He actually finished on the lead lap, I believe, at the end of the race, but crashed at the end.
just looking, there were 74 laps run. He was 9 laps down in 38th.
Oh, yeah, correct me. He did have to pit for a little bit, but him and Clint Boyer pretty much were the stars of that show. Clint Boyer actually led a lap. What world are we living in 2020?
And then his engine blew up.
Oh, yeah.
That was the most Clint Boyer thing ever.
Clint Boyer, he led a lap in an iRacing event. How about that? But I just out of pure fun, I do want to bring up Denny Hamlin because the reason why he retired was incredible. There was footage shown where he was just riding along, minding his own business, running his sim, just driving in the pack. And then his daughter goes over, kind of fiddles with some of the controls, and the screen goes black. Hamlin just disconnected right then and there and could not get back in the race. So that happened, basically, to put it. But
and this is why you do not carry over points from iRacing over to a regular series. Exactly. This is why you do not do that, NASCAR Euro.
Yeah, I still can't believe NASCAR Euro did that. But
or is going to be doing that, and we'll have to see.
We'll have to see what happens. So, I mean, over the last few weeks, we've talked a lot about virtual racing because there hasn't been real racing going on. But I feel like this week we've got a big reason to get excited because, fellas, real racing is coming back. Now, I know there's going to be some mixed reactions about this, but there's some other stuff I want to get out of the way before we get into the meat of everything concerning racing coming back to society, basically. Sports coming back in a sense. So there's some big news that happened. First news that I want to get out of the way or just talk about for a little bit. It's probably the best news that you can hear right now. Ryan Newman, who was injured in his crash at Daytona on the final lap, coming to the line of the Daytona 500, where he suffered a bruised brain in his accident when he got hit by Corey LaJoie. Newman has been medically cleared to drive and will return to the number 6 car when racing resumes. Yes. Hallelujah. It is great to see Ryan Newman, the Rocket Man, return behind the wheel. And not only that, but he has been granted a medical waiver. So if the playoffs still happen, Ryan Newman, if he happens to win a race or win a race and get in the top 30 in points, he'll be granted a medical waiver.
He's not out of the playoffs. He's not out of the points picture just yet. He's only 54 points, and he's behind 16th place, and he's missed 3 races.
Yeah, just 3 races.
Wow.
3 races before everything went to madness. So Newman has got to be one of the luckiest people alive right now, I would think, in terms of NASCAR and racing. Another change that I want to bring up, Chip Ganassi Racing. I remember a couple weeks ago when we had Gavin Doe on the show, we were talking about we were debating who's going to replace Kyle Larson after he dropped the racial epithet and basically killed the rest of his season. We had brought up, well, Ross Chastain could come over. Jamie McMurray could come by and come out of retirement and run the 42. Well, Chip Ganassi Racing announced their replacement, and keeping those 2 drivers in mind, he took those candidates very seriously. So with that in mind, Chip Ganassi has hired Matt Kenseth to drive the 42. Yeah, you're not hearing that incorrectly. You're not mishearing that. Matt Kenseth, the 2003 Cup Series champion, is coming back to drive the 42 for the rest of the season. Bombshell. I mean, Hallie Step, what to think about Matt Kenseth coming back?
I am at a complete loss for words. Did this announcement come before Newman was cleared?
Around the same time,
yes,
or just
after because
After.
Newman announced on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about the timing, because Newman coming back would have opened the door for Chastain to go to the 42, but now he's just kind of in limbo in terms of Cup Series, which, I mean, now his points aren't going to go to the Cup Series, so that's for sure. But wow, Matt Kenseth to the 42 was not something I ever thought I'd hear in my life, because I thought, okay, maybe he'd go to Roush in case there was an emergency. He'd take over at Roush again, because that's what Matt Kenseth does. He's a loyal guy. And this is just out of nowhere. Different manufacturer, different team he's never raced for. This is something you never thought would happen with Matt Kenseth, but Joey Logano better watch out on the track again. I mean, this is got to be in his top 5 nightmares. He's back on the track again. Oh, no.
I can just imagine Logano fans walking up to Kenseth fans like, here's $100. Go away. Just go away. Justin, what was your initial reaction when you heard Matt Kenseth to the 42?
Well, first I heard the news that Ross Chastain wasn't going to be in the 42, which instantly got my mind spinning, because I initially thought it was either going to be Jamie McMurray or David Reagan. It was going to be one of the two guys in the Fox studio. Or because keep in mind, David Reagan was kind of in and out. He was just out. Oh, that made sense to bring him back in. And then you hear the name Matt Kenseth. We have gone back to 2003 this week for NASCAR. We got 2 races is at Darlington, which we'll get to in a bit. We got Matt Kenseth in a Chevy. We got Ryan Newman returning. This is just absolute madness. And just Matt Kenseth coming back, it makes sense when you look at it from a pure racing point. He is the best guy who's actually going to come out of retirement to do this. It's excluding Carl Edwards, but he's won races. He's not that far removed. He's been in this replacement role. He has a connection with McDonald's, which is really important, and because of 1998. Back in the book Busch series. Remember that paint scheme?
There was that one Cup race he ran for Bill Elliott in '98, and Kenseth drove it to a top 10. And if I remember correctly, he also drove a Chevy in his Busch days in '98 and '99 when Robbie Reiser owned the team.
Yep, and that's exactly where you get the McDonald's connection from. But it makes sense from a racing perspective once you kind of figure out the rest of the puzzle. And this is probably a 1-year deal. I think we all kind of know that this is only going to be temporary for Matt Kenseth, but it'll be kind of nice to have a second send-off for him, because I know his first send-off was largely overshadowed by Dale Earnhardt Jr. So it'll be nice to see him go off into the sunset. And then again, and the second time around, he's got to deal with Jimmy Johnson. So what the heck do I know?
Well, I mean, if you really think about it, this could be Kenseth's third send-off, because he drove part-time schedule for Roush Fenway in 2018. I just feel like Kenseth always got overlooked. He's the kind of driver who is consistent and will perform at the top level that you expect of him, and yet he doesn't get a lot of attention for it. The most noteworthy thing, I feel like, aside from his championship, which we'll put that aside because that was in 2003. That's a long time ago. I was only like 4 or 5 years old when that happened. When Kenseth won his championship, aside from that, the most noteworthy thing he did was put Joey Logano in the wall at Martinsville, and he gained about 50,000 fans that day.
right behind the Brad Keselowski incident where
Oh yeah, that too.
Bestwick's like, oh, that's Matt Kenseth. That's kind of the quote of his career. Or like towards his later career. Just basically, oh, that's Matt Kenseth.
Yeah,
It's coming out of nowhere.
Just a surprise in Bestwick's voice. Pardon me 1 second. I'm trying to take care of some tech stuff. But basically with Kenseth, the way I see Chip Ganassi's decision making is like this. Because with Matt Kenseth, I mean, he's a family guy. I mean, he's married. He has, I think, 3 kids, I want to say, or 4 maybe, because I know his son Ross, and then at least 2 daughters. I believe even a third. The details are fuzzy on me right now. But with Matt Kenseth, I mean, he's very family oriented. He's respected around the garage area. Pretty much a clean PR record concerning sponsors. The only he did get into some incidents, obviously, with Team Penske, with Keselowski and Logano, but for the most part, Matt Kenseth is remembered fondly in the community in NASCAR. So for
He's kind
Kenseth
of
to
like
come
the
back,
mayor.
yeah, for Kenseth to come back from a PR standpoint, it's a win-win scenario because you got sponsors that are still loyal to Chip Ganassi, and now you've got a driver who is very well liked around the garage area. Sponsors are appreciative of his services in driving their car with their logo slapped on the side or quarter panel or the hood of the car. So yeah, why not go for Matt Kenseth? Now, it is going to be interesting because when Kenseth gets into the sport again, he is going to be the oldest active driver on the circuit. I mean, he's 48 years old. The guy up next behind Kenseth is Jimmy Johnson. Johnson is 44. So Kenseth's got a few years under him. I mean, several years under him, but I don't want to make him sound too old. But yeah, Matt Kenseth, he drove for Roush Fenway for a really long time, from 2000 to 2012, then went to Joe Gibbs for 5 years, then got forced out because Eric Jones came over. So that was basically a retirement for Kenseth, only for him to come out of retirement a few months later because Trevor Bayne was struggling in the 6th. So then Kenseth filled in a few races, yada, yada, had some good runs here or there that got little to no attention. And then he fades off again and is in retirement. And then, oh, we're bringing him back now. And he's running a Chevy in, I would say, is if it's not championship level equipment, it's really good equipment. So it'll be fun to see what Matt Kenseth does. And I like that, Justin, you brought up Carl Edwards, because ironically, Kenseth was not even Chip Ganassi's first choice. It was Carl Edwards who he was looking to drive that 42. However, Edwards, the polite and respectful guy that he is, he declined to take the seat. It just goes to show that Carl is probably never coming back to NASCAR at this point, unless something big changes in his mind. But I don't see Carl coming back, even though the fans really, really want to see him come back. So with that out of the way, Ross Chastain, I mean, he was the guy. He's still under contract with Chip Ganassi. So I'll start again with Hal on this. With Chastain, you've got him waiting in the wings. He's under contract for your team. Why not bring him up?
I'm guessing they wanted him to get that full season under the Xfinity points. That's the only reason I could imagine. And even then, it's still kind of questionable. Why not just bring him up right now? He has shown in the 6 that he has good runs in him already. He can go out there and have a pretty good race, and 42 is your top car. And it is curious. I really thought that if it was available, Ross Chastain was going to be the driver in the 42. But I guess maybe they thought it was more sponsor-friendly to bring in Matt Kenseth. Because, as you said, he has a squeaky clean PR reputation outside of his Penske incidences. But Ross hasn't angered any sponsors in the Cup Series, and he doesn't really do much to anger sponsors. So it's really confusing to me why they didn't bring him up.
I could probably tell you why they didn't bring him up. And if you look at his 4 races so far this season, he wrecked in twice of them, 2 races this season. One was at Daytona when he made a very aggressive move. I mean, Ryan Preece did not help that situation, but he made a very aggressive move. And then he wrecked at, I believe it was the following week at Vegas, if I recall correctly. Either that or Phoenix.
Yeah, Chastain spun in Vegas.
So, and he's kind of had that checkers or records kind of vibe to him. He's a very aggressive driver. And I'm not sure Chip Ganassi wants that this season with a guy who is going to wreck cars in a very condensed schedule. Because keep in mind, we got to talk about keeping the car clean. Matt Kenseth's one of the best guys out there for that. And rarely do you see Matt Kenseth getting caught up in the wreck anywhere but Talladega and Daytona, unless he's wrecking Joey Logano. Oh, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah, or unless some kind of mechanical failure, like a tire blowout or something like that happens. But or if an ambulance is out there and he just happens to run in the back of it, just like Richmond 20.
That was Michael McDowell.
Well, Newman. Kenseth did it too in 2017 at Richmond.
That's right, he did.
Yeah, because the ambulance was out there for no reason, or I think it had stopped for something, and then Kenseth just ran in the back of it. Unsighted, by the way. It wasn't Kenseth's fault. I want to put that out. But
yeah.
Good
grief. The safety crews at Richmond really deserve a pay raise. But besides that point, Ross Chastain, he's still obviously the future of Chip Ganassi Racing. I think we can all agree that he will be in that 42 car unless he's going to the 48 next season. And even that is probably risky at this point. So get some more experience in the Xfinity. You're a Final Four contender. Or go after that championship and then come back and get ready for the 2021 season. And keep in mind, Ross Chastain's not completely out of Cup just yet, and either. Spire Motorsports, they only have Reed Sorensen there right now. They could easily put Ross Chastain in for a couple more races, and he actually will be racing on the 24th. That is part of their deal with Advent Health Center, or he will be driving that 77 for the 600 and coming up. So, wait, is it either that or Daytona? I can't tell. I can't remember which one, but he's going to be at Spire for a couple of races. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in it for a couple more races this season. But Chastain, and it's just not time yet to bring him up. And one last point on Matt Kenseth. Aren't we getting some Mark Martin and retirement simulator vibes here?
No, you're not the only one getting them. Yeah. I mean, Martin, he was going to retire after 05 and then changed his mind and came back for 06. But then he went part-time in 07, 08, only to come back full-time in 09 and through 2011, and then part-time in 2012. In 2013, he called it. And then when Tony Stewart got actually, no, it wasn't that Tony Stewart got injured. It was that Stewart
it was
had that Kevin Ward incident.
Yeah.
And then Martin came for like a race or two in that 14.
Before Reagan Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Matt Kenseth and Ryan Newman. Both of them, by the way, have been granted waivers. So if they win a race and they're in the top 30, they're in the playoff. The win and you're in, which, yeah, I mean, in a way, it really shouldn't be happening. I mean, Newman, to me, that's fine. With Kenseth,
no question,
it's a little more difficult to stomach. But, yeah.
I disagree with it. And this just comes down to the wording of the rule.
Yeah.
Only in the most extreme circumstances. So what I've always read into that rule was if it happens at our tracks, you're going to get the waiver. I mean, obviously Ryan Newman was going to get the waiver. That would be the dumbest PR move NASCAR has made since Brian France. And let's be honest with that. But Well, in terms of NASCAR, just the NASCAR organization as a whole, we're not counting other stuff. But Matt Kenseth getting the waiver, I even disagree with Tony Stewart getting the waiver back in 2016. I don't think he should have gotten it for his sand dune incident, but I just don't like the wording of that rule right now because clearly the way the rule is written, Kenseth should not get it. But he is going to get it, and I get why, because of the sponsors and everything else that goes along with it. You want a guy to contend for the title. You want to sweep the Larson incident under the rug. I get all of that. But he did not attempt 3 races into this season. He did not even try to get a ride for those 3 races. So why now are we granting him a waiver to get into the playoffs? And clearly he is capable of doing it. I mean, right now, David Reagan holds the 30th spot in points. And he doesn't have that far to catch up. But I disagree with NASCAR's ruling on it. I don't think Kansas should get the waiver unless they're willing to change that rule.
I mean,
I think
sorry, Hal, go ahead.
I think that it's partially a reward to Chip Ganassi Racing for cutting ties. I think that was their way of saying, bring in whoever you can, and you're not going to lose out on a playoff chance. So I think it's more of a favor to the team itself so that you don't have a car counted out completely.
Yeah, whatever the reason may be. Matt Kenseth, he's got the waiver now. And, I mean, it'll be up to how long the season is if they get all 36 races or the remaining 32, however many there are left, trying to fit them all in, which I feel like is going to be a really tall task. But, I mean, anything can happen. I mean, we've all been shut down for about 2 months, so.
We ready to jump right into that conversation?
Let's, we can jump into the next topic of business that we have that I want to talk about is the new safety changes first. We'll talk about that because today NASCAR announced some new precautions, some new regulations in terms of car safety, as well as changes in competition. Give me 1 second. I'm going to share the screen on this. There we go. So the safety changes that NASCAR made, they released a bulletin today for teams that included extra safety enhancements developed from the investigation of Ryan Newman's crash from the Daytona 500 back on February 17th. The safety enhancements include the following: the elimination of aero ducts at super speedway tracks. Now, of course, NASCAR switched from the restrictor plates to the aero ducts beginning at Talladega in the spring of last year, and the cars were noticeably faster, like up in the mid 200 mile an hour range. Moving on, the reduction in the size of the throttle body from 59/64ths of an inch to 57/64ths of an inch. It's meant to try to make the cars slower. It'll be at super speedways only. An updated roll bar padding specification that will be mandatory at all tracks beginning on June 1st. The oil reservoir tank or overflow expansion tank must contain a check valve. That's mandatory at all tracks beginning with Talladega. As we noticed in the aftermath of Newman's crash, there was a lot of fuel that was spewing out, and just from a fan's perspective, I was fearful that that car was going to just catch fire and perhaps even explode if that fuel ignited. The slip tape must be applied along the entire length of the lower rearward facing surfaces of the rear bumper cover and extension. That's for super speedways only. Justin, you and I were talking about this along with Hal before the show started, and this is meant to, if I'm correct on this, to try to decrease bump drafting.
That's correct. That from what I've read, it's kind of decreasing the bump drafting and the big runs that guys are getting. And so the 7 to 8 mile an hour runs that everybody's been getting over the past couple of years, where guys are trying to block that, they're trying to slow that down to where blocking is a little bit more manageable. It's still not safe, but it's now a little more manageable to put a block on someone.
Yeah, it's still something that can be done. Yeah, it's not the safest thing, but then again, motorsports isn't really entirely safe at all. It never really is. As well, okay, the last safety enhancement on here is the addition of a lower main roll bar support, bar number 20, and an intrusion plate, and upper main roll bar support, bar number 21. It is mandatory to be run on super speedways and optional elsewhere. Justin, you have that picture that you were showing us before. Okay, I'm going to get out of the share and let you let us have a look at that shot for us. There it is. So the change we're looking at is right in there. Is right. Hold on, we're on your screen. Where the yellow highlighted part. I'm viewing this from mine.
Yep. So this is on the left side of the car, or this is on the driver's side, and it was kind of clear to NASCAR that that part of the car was compromised when Corey LaJoie hit Newman's car. So this is that bar is going to help reduce that impact. I would think.
Yeah.
So
looks like it'll definitely provide some extra strength there.
So it'll be on the left side. It won't be on the right side, which I'm kind of surprised by. I think that I don't know. I feel like it's going to be even eventually. But that left side's going to get a little bit of additional support.
Yeah, that'll be good for some extra protection there behind the driver's helmet area where they're sitting in the car, and they got that extra support behind them. So with those safety enhancements, I'll try to get back to my screen now. There were also some changes in competition. They include a temporary ban on most testing that will be lifted on May 4th. However, on-track testing will not be allowed in the Cup, Xfinity, or the Truck Series for the remainder of this season. Organizations are allocated a total of 150 hours in the wind tunnel through December 31st of next year, with a maximum usage of 70 hours in 2020 and 90 in 2021. Wind tunnel testing of next-gen vehicles by individual organizations is not permitted. And also, all remaining parts submission meetings for 2020 have been canceled. The minimum number of short block sealed engines changes from 13 to 8. And it includes some information that NASCAR had banned all testing not related to the next-gen car on March 17th. So those competition changes and safety enhancements, it's obviously it'll put the drivers at ease on terms of safety, especially considering how Ryan Newman's accident, the aftermath, the damage that was seen on the car. But with these competition changes, there's not going to be a whole lot of testing time. And I'm trying to remember if we had mentioned this on the show before, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the next-gen car, which was supposed to be integrated next season, has been pushed back to 2022. So with the lack of testing, how is that going to affect the drivers? I'll start with Justin on this. How is that going to affect the teams?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to affect them as much as we think it would normally. Because keep in mind, this is one of the first years for most tracks on the schedule where we're running the same package back-to-back seasons. So your mile and a half, your 2 miles, everything above, if I want to say 0.7 is where the short track play rule book was coming into play. That's all going to be the same. And you have a playbook for that already. You don't need to do much testing on those tracks, so that makes sense. And even the short tracks, I think we're going to go back to a former playbook for those tracks. It's just in terms of more bumping and running and a lot less of the lack of being able to pass because of the aerodynamics. I think we're going to see a lot more of the cars being able to take advantage of that. And I think that definitely puts the bigger teams at a disadvantage because those are the guys who are going to be in the wind tunnels the most. So having them out of the wind tunnels as much as they can kind of for 2020, it kind of opens up the playing field a little bit for guys like Chip Ganassi, guys like Roush Fenway, RCR, or on a smaller scale, but to the big teams like RPM, Germain, and Levi, Go Fast Racing, and Front Row, those teams are going to have a huge kind of catch up to the bigger teams because the bigger teams have kind of been nerfed in terms of their research and development programs for the 2020 season and going into 2021 for that matter too.
How will teams and the sport be impacted with these testing regulations?
I think the sport itself, thinking about parity, we always talk about parity when it comes to big teams. The small teams getting a bit of a push towards being on the scale the big teams have been nerfed, as Justin put it. That's going to be fun for those fans of small teams to watch. Like many have complained, RCR and Roush have fallen off from their heyday. So it'll be interesting to see if they can actually use this to their advantage and get back up to their old performances, not their old performance, but closer to it. This could definitely benefit smaller teams, but I still think the bigger teams will have their advantage of just more talent. A lot of them have better talented drivers because they're the bigger teams. So I think you're still going to see Joe Gibbs racing out there pretty much dominating a lot. I still think. But it will be interesting to see how this affects a lot of those smaller teams. I would be very interested to see how RCR and Roush in particular perform.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like overall, from a competition standpoint, it's really not going to change much. You'll still have JGR, Hendrick, Penske running away with races, but it will be interesting to see what the small teams can do with these testing regulations. But we've covered a lot concerning safety. We've covered some big free agent, well, not so much free agent, but just driver change news. Let's get into the good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing will be one of the first professional sports organizations to return to action, basically trying to get normal races back up and running. Their first race that they're going to have will be Sunday, May 17th at the Darlington Raceway in South Carolina. It'll be a Cup Series event, a 400-miler, which would make the race about 293 laps. It will start at 3:30 Eastern Time, and it'll be shown on Fox. So, with that said, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, NASCAR's back. We're getting sports back. And then there's others who will see this and go, no, this is just wrong. NASCAR, I mean, they're already in hot water with Kyle Larson. Why are they doing this now? They're putting everyone at risk, which, to start, number one, there are no fans at these races. It's been pretty clear, cut and dry. It's stated in public. There are going to be no spectators allowed at Darlington or any of the following races that have been announced as scheduled. Just looking at the schedule that there is now, NASCAR plans to run, it is 7 races over an 11-day span throughout the second half of the month of May. Starting with Darlington on May 17th, they're also going to run a 500-kilometer event on Wednesday, the Cup Series will. It'll be like a Wednesday night event at Darlington. Meanwhile, the night before will be an Xfinity race on May 19th. Then they take a few days off. They travel from Darlington to their home base in Charlotte, North Carolina, And they're going to run a lot of races there. Sunday, May 24th, we'll have the Coke 600 at Charlotte. Then the night after will be the Xfinity Series, running a 300-mile event at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Tuesday, the 26th of May, we'll have the Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series. Can't forget RV. NGROTS, I could call it. 200-mile event on Tuesday, May 26th. And then a 4-day stretch is capped off Wednesday, May 27th, a 500-kilometer nighttime event for Wednesday night action at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So 7 races in 11 days. Basically, with this preliminary schedule, a couple things that I've noticed here. One is that it really looks like NASCAR is trying to make it regional. They're just going to start from different regions across the country and try to expand further out. If the pandemic starts going away, then they'll be like, okay, we can start broadening our circle, start going to these other places. And they're starting in their home base of the Carolinas. The second thing I've noticed with the schedule that's been put out, there's going to be a lot of midweek races. And Justin, you put in the agenda some of the guidelines that are going to be happening. There are no practice and qualifying. It's basically been canceled, except for the Coke 600. In addition, 16 people per car, basically 16 crew members per car, will be permitted with live pit stops still enabled. Driver motorhomes will be at each track, but they will be spaced out around the properties of these facilities to allow drivers to self-isolate during the day. NASCAR, they'll have things like one-way paths in the garages so people don't cross. Also, everybody in the infield will have to wear a mask at all times. So that's a requirement. Crews and drivers, this next bit is really interesting because crews and drivers will not be tested for the coronavirus. There aren't enough tests available for that, and NASCAR doesn't want to take up the tests that do exist. So what they will do is basically like what they're like, just speaking from personal experience, what they're doing at Walmart. They have people at the entrance gates. They'll be scanning their temperatures, scanning their foreheads. If the temperatures are fine, then they're able to go in. They'll also do checks of symptoms. If they're showing signs of symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19, or if their temperature is high enough to be classified as a fever, they will not be permitted inside the facility. And another thing is that there will be 3 tracks that are losing races. That's actually kind of new to me. What tracks are there? Okay, well, I think Kansas is one. Now that I think
they have not announced it, but they will be announced before the Darlington race. They know what tracks they are going to be, but they haven't announced it, and they will be contacting those tracks very shortly.
Got it. I feel like I don't want to speculate too much, but considering how the schedule is being arranged the way that I feel like it's going to be arranged, I feel like Kansas is going to be one of those tracks that loses at least one date, considering it's scheduled for May 31st. And if they're trying to go just region-based, then I don't really see how it's going to work to go from the Southeast to the Midwest in such a sharp change of time and such a short time frame. So that's the schedule and some other regulations and requirements that have been put out here. Let's talk about the pros and cons of NASCAR getting back to racing. And I want to start with the cons just to get them out of the way. I think there's one obvious con. If someone has COVID, it puts everything into trouble. Everyone is at risk, and the season is pretty much lost.
It's game over.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Hal, I know you, definitely agree with that. If one person has it, it's pretty much done. But just What are some other cons that you can think of aside from the risk of potentially somebody getting infected? I'll start with Hallie stuff on this.
PR. From a PR standpoint, NASCAR is going to be pointed at as the scapegoat sport. While there is one other sport that is getting underway around the same time, they're not going to get the same backlash because somehow the UFC has been trying this entire time to make events and hasn't received as much backlash. NASCAR has the disadvantage of it already has a stigma, and they're going to call NASCAR, if that happens, that dumb sport that decided to go out and try this when everybody said not to. However, they're doing it the right way. If there is a right way to do it, this is it. They're doing everything in their power to make sure that outside of having the testing, which that's a double-edged sword, the testing guideline right there, of not testing drivers and crews, because if you don't test them, they're going to say you're not taking enough precaution. If you do test them, they're going to say you're wasting tests. So there is no winning on that guideline. But basically, from a PR standpoint, it is a con. I think, however, it is kind of balanced by the fact that there are people who are going to be saying, I just want to watch something. I want to watch something live, and the ratings are going to be what rules in this.
Yeah, Justin, any other cons aside from potential infection? And
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely nailed it on the head, and that's kind of been my biggest concern. Is the safety of the drivers, the crews, everybody involved. Because I mean, you mentioned the UFC and how they've been trying to get things going. Yeah, UFC's been trying to get this going. It's been going for a while, but you also have to keep in mind how many people are at a UFC event that absolutely need to be there. How many people absolutely need to be there? You're looking at roughly 50 to 80 people, all given TV crews, trainers, there's medical personnel, the two fighters in the ring, the referee, the TV crew, etc. You're looking at about 50 to 80 people for a UFC event. That's a lot more manageable than the 1,000 of people who are going to be emerging onto Darlington and Speedway on May 17th. That just, again, NASCAR is the worst guinea pig out there to be going back. Like, it's almost too big of a pool to really get this thing going. Because if you get one affected, chances are you've got dozens, if not hundreds of people who are going to get infected inside the NASCAR garage, because they're not going to show symptoms until it is too late at the racetrack. And that's the biggest concern. That's not even the biggest concern. The worst concern is if someone goes in asymptomatic and then things start spreading from there, or half the garage may be in trouble when you have that. But you also look at the PR right now. Things are not like looking too good on the NASCAR PR side. I mean, we've had Daytona this year, which is, take your political sides on that, and you had the president of the United States at the Daytona International Speedway.
Yeah,
you had the Kyle Larson incident that almost reinforced the stereotype that NASCAR has been trying to get rid of for about at least a half decade, and if not longer. You have the report that came out just the other day saying that the drive for diversity drivers are doing a lot worse than the non-drive for diversity drivers out there. And that report basically it came down to sponsorship, but people are going to read the headline that says drivers as in the drivers of diversity program are not doing well, are probably going to get at NASCAR. Just the headline alone is already going to reinforce statements.
Yeah, basically drive for diversity graduates aren't doing as well as those who don't go through the program, And because of that, some readers are going to see that and think, well,
Yeah, no, oh, dip Sherlock. But now you have this. You have the Southern sport leading the charge back to relevancy.
yeah,
How's that looking to as the suburbia? How's that looking to everybody else who are seeing kind of the protests and seeing what's going on in Myrtle Beach, what they're seeing in Michigan right now? Oh, it just all comes back to NASCAR on that. And you're also going to have people, I'm willing to bet, who are going to try to get it as close to that racetrack as humanly possible. I'm willing to bet that. And again, we don't know what's going to happen in 3 weeks, but 2.5 weeks, I should say. But I just don't see the benefit for NASCAR in this situation. They're trying to have the perfect storm just with too much bad PR going into it. And the same thing that made the 1979 Daytona 500 so special of the Southern sport or becoming mainstream is kind of what NASCAR is trying to do now, when NASCAR's already been mainstream and is on its way out in the mainstream light.
yeah. I mean, I obviously two really good points. One, someone can get it. And I feel like if someone there at the track, it doesn't matter who it is, driver, crew member, media personnel, emergency personnel, if somebody is infected with COVID-19, PR is going to get a hold of that and they're going to have a field day with it. They're going to say that NASCAR did not learn anything from the Kyle Larson situation. And even though it's two entirely different, well, not entirely different, but it's two different situations, it's just going to reflect badly on NASCAR and the social perception. It's already bad enough that Larson had to drop the N-word with a hard R in the iRacing event and set NASCAR's social perception back about 3 decades. And now this, it's a high risk situation that NASCAR is going into. I understand they want to get back to normalcy, and that realistically, Americans, they want to get back to normal. Trust me, I want to get back to normal. We all want to get back to normal. If things were normal, we'd still be in Colombia right now having this show over a radio format and just enjoying our time preparing for final exams that are coming up and stressing out over that in our dorm rooms or apartments instead of our homes. But like family homes are like halfway across the country. But it's just, it's not a good situation that NASCAR's in. Now, but another con that I want to bring up is that how are the drivers and crews going to deal with this? I mean, yeah, they've been home. They've had time with their families. They've been spending time with them, or at least I hope they'd be spending time with them. Now they're going to be asked to go on just a relentless streak of, we got to go here, we got to go here, we got to go here. And it's, if this continues on through the rest of the season, how are the drivers going to keep up? And how are the teams going to keep up? Because, like, if they wreck a car on Sunday, they got to get a car ready in just a couple days. They got to have one on set. And practice and qualifying are canceled, which looking on it now, that makes a lot of sense. Because if you wreck a car in practice or qualifying, and then you wreck a backup during the race, and you've got a race coming in a few days, you're out of luck pretty much, because there is not enough time unless you are in the immediate proximity of your shop. There is not enough time to just go make sure a car is ready to go and then bring it to another track. So I'm just curious as to how the drivers are going to handle this. In addition to NASCAR's perception from the mainstream, just from people all across America seeing this, if this works for NASCAR, though, if no one gets infected and this works, then people are going to appreciate what NASCAR is doing, I feel like. They'll see what they're doing, and they're trying to get back to normal. I mean, I like this. I like how it's getting back to normal. It's not entirely normal. it won't be for a while because fans are not going to be allowed in. It's not going to be normal for a long, long time. But they're trying. But if someone does get infected, it will the whole effort that they're trying to put in to trying to get back to some sense of normalcy, it would backfire spectacularly, and it would not be pretty.
I think the only reason why they gotta go for it is because of the sponsorships. I think that's the only. Yeah, I think that's the only reason you can give me to justify continuing and with a little bit of a ridiculous schedule that you're going to have. But I think about drivers and their crew members and their family members. Look at Martin Truex Jr. Think about what he's having to deal with his longtime girlfriend.
Yeah, Sherry Pollock's
she is
ovarian cancer.
She is one of the most compromised people. If COVID-19 were to spread, and is one of the high risk people out there who you cannot have go back out into society right now. And these are the people that they're trying to protect. So what is Martin Truex Jr. going to do? He's.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's just Truex. I mean, it's everybody.
I'm just giving the example of Truex, but you look at that. That's just 1 in 640 cases across the garage area that are going to be converging onto Darlington on May 17th. But you also have to wonder, these teams have to get 3 cars ready in a matter of let's just say 2.5 weeks for a track that they didn't have on the schedule until September. None of these teams are going to be ready to do that. That's a huge demand for a big team, let alone a team like Premium Motorsports or Rick Ware Racing, and who's just going through either a buyout or a merge or something that's going on with those two teams that's kind of been under the radar the past couple of weeks. What are they going to do? They can't bring all those cars to the racetrack without running the whole race. Are they going to start and park? Are they going to run a few laps and say, okay, we're calling it a day because we got to get ready for the next race is here on Wednesday? What are they going to do? So this is, again, it's a high-risk, low-reward, I think. Yeah, the ratings are going to be high, and you maybe catch a few people here and there, but it's not going to solve all the issues of your sport that have been plaguing you for the past 10 years. And it could do a lot more damage if it doesn't work, Eric. And there's probably going to be a 95% chance that this all does not go according to plan to NASCAR. I'm not saying that someone's going to get affected, but there's a 95% chance that this is not going to work out in NASCAR's favor one way or another.
Yeah, I feel like they're going to have to change things as they go. I mean, it's kind of like throwing darts at a wall, because you're just like, you have an idea of what you want to do, but you also got to account for, okay, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? So there's a lot that can go wrong. And for NASCAR, I feel like they just got to adapt. Hallie, anything else to add?
I think Justin hit just about all of it. There are so many ways this can go wrong. And even if this succeeds in you have all the races, you have all 36, teams are not going to survive this year because of how many cars are going to have to pull out, because there are going to crash. That is going to happen at one of these races, and that will be the point where a lot of these teams go, I don't know if we can sustain this. I don't think we can sustain going through the rest of the season. And say they go to Talladega. Are all the teams going to run the race at Talladega? Because it's the risk-reward factor of my car is not going to survive that race. There is a high chance it gets involved in a wreck. And at that point, you just go, we're just going to pack it in for this week. We'll be back at another speedway where my car might survive.
I don't think they're going to drop out completely. I think they're going to do the tactical 2008, 2009, and probably all the way up until 2013 start and park method of running like 20 to 30 laps and then saying, okay, where's my paycheck? Pay me. Yeah, I think that's going to be a very likely scenario for a team like Rick Ware, Premium Motorsports versus 15 car. I think Spire is very likely to do that for every single race coming up, except for the Coca-Cola 600, because they have an obligation with Ross Chastain. I think you're also going to have teams like TMB. Think about right now what Timmy Hill is doing, and then you have to take that back because Carl Long can't afford to pay his employees right now, let alone get a car wrecked like that Charlotte or Darlington. And so there's going to be a lot of teams who have to make a decision to start and park. And I think a team like Gaunt Brothers is highly considering that, and because they don't have a charter. Or that's the reality of the situation that a lot of these teams are facing. And I would not be surprised if there's going to be a team in who is a charter selling to Gaunt Brothers towards the latter end of the season for pennies on the dollar. This is a very, I mean, the damage is already going to be a massive. I don't know what NASCAR is doing with the damage control, but it's going to take some NASA ingenuity to steer this ship home.
Yeah. Whatever happens, it'll be. I feel like I say interesting a lot. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but it really will be fascinating to see what NASCAR is able to do, how they adapt, if they're able to adapt, and if they get all these races in. And here's to hoping that, I mean, I'll be happy to talk about real racing. I'm just fingers crossed and saying prayer that no one gets sick and that no one is infected.
We hope nobody gets sick all around the world, period.
Yeah, or anywhere. So, again, wash those hands, stay safe, stay healthy. That's basically what we're trying to say. And don't lick subway poles on a subway train. Just don't. Just use common sense, basically.
Just why?
And don't panic buy either. Trust me, I've worked at Walmart. I've seen it happen. So, another schedule I want to talk about that I didn't have listed initially, but I do want to bring it up is Formula One. They are changing their calendar quite a bit. Trying to find. Okay. So yeah, they have changed their schedule around quite a bit, where they're taking what seems like what NASCAR is trying to do. They are going to try to run races in different regions of the world, if it's possible to do that. I'll share the screen on this again. Taking us to an article from Auto Week magazine. So here is their preliminary schedule as of now. Hypothetically, there are some tracks that are willing to hold 2 races this season. That's why Austria and as well as Silverstone and the Hungaroring are listed twice. So you'll have, hypothetically, this is just what's been printed out right now, Austria, Great Britain, and Hungary hosting the first 6 races of the season, July through August. Then they travel to Baku in Azerbaijan for September 6th. And all of these are in Europe. I should probably mention that. If you notice, Germany, also
France.
other race, yeah, France is absent as well. They have
Netherlands is out
for the foreseeable future. Justin, what was that last one you mentioned?
Netherlands are also out of the running right now.
Let's see. Yeah, Netherlands right now is not being shown because I don't see Dutch Grand Prix on here. So basically, these rounds would be in Europe. And then you get to kind of like Asia. You get Singapore on September 20th, going to Russia, then China, Japan. That's the Asia/Oceania area, September through like first week of October. Then they go to the Americas. Early October, I should say, because the Japanese GP is in there. Then the Americas, both North and South. You go to the U.S. on October 25th at Circuit of the Americas. Then Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico, first weekend of November. Then to Brazil and South America, the weekend after that. And then they'll travel for a stop back in Asia, in South Asia, for Vietnam, November 22nd, and then 2 races in the Middle East to round out the year in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi. Now, counting the races that are there, that is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's 17 races total. That's down from the 22 that were originally scheduled for this season. However, as we know, Monaco is canceled, Australia is canceled, Germany, France, and the Netherlands are not listed on the schedule. They are either postponed or canceled altogether. And I don't think, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think there was Canada listed there either. In fact, there are quite a few that aren't on there, because now I think there was no Spain on there. There was no Italy. There are a lot of races on there that are no longer there, basically. So, I guess that one thing I could ask is, we'll start with Justin on this. What are the realistic chances that Formula One is able to be racing this season?
It depends on, honestly, what Spain and Britain do. That's going to be the main 2 that everybody's going to have to keep an eye out for, that, because a lot of the teams are going to be based out of those 2 countries. So those are going to be the 2 main catalysts, I would say. Everything else is secondary. And the one race that I'm still surprised to see on there is China. I am kind of absolutely shocked that China is still going to be having a Grand Prix this season, tentatively. But it's basically wiped out almost the entire European inside of the season, and which is normally in the June, July area. It's also wiped out Canada. So a lot of these decently, if not really good tracks, are going to be left off the schedule this year. And it's also a little bit disappointing that to not see Monaco on there. I get at the concerns with that area, especially with Italy. So those tracks, absolutely, it makes sense not to run it there this year. I don't know. I don't like their chances. Their chances as much compared to NASCAR. It's an international sport. I think they'll get a decent amount towards the end in October and beyond. I think that's when the schedule could be well, but even then you do have to worry about a second or third or whatever wave this is coming back.
Yeah, Hallie, what are the realistic chances in your mind that Formula One basically completes a season?
It basically all depends on how these countries are going to respond, because quite frankly, seeing Britain with 2 races with their response is concerning, because Great Britain has not had the greatest response to COVID-19, and I don't know if they're going to be prepared for a race that early. The China Grand Prix also took me off guard, because that is again, that was another place where it originated and where it became a concern. So seeing both of those countries on there makes me think, I don't think that's what the schedule is going to end up looking like. Now, they can still, I think, in some of those other countries, they can find a way, but it's not really a complete season at that point. So my faith in that schedule, having a completed season, I don't see it happening, but a revised one, maybe.
Yeah, right now, the way things are, a complete schedule, it's gone. There is no complete schedule, because Monaco's gone, Australia's gone, and just to be sure, I checked on the schedule, and France is officially gone. So there is no French Grand Prix this year. But for other tracks, like going to China, I know people are going to be skeptical of it right away because that's where this pandemic pretty much originated, at least from many scientific reports. It's just, it also, and it does depend on how countries are handling it and how they are responding to the pandemic, how many people are infected, how widespread it is. Is it just in like a corner of the country, like just a one specific region, or is it on a nationwide scale like it is in the U.S.? So I'm curious to see if Formula One can really even get going this season, because I'm honestly concerned in the back of my mind that they're not even going to be able to race this year because of everything unfolding. I mean, in Italy, we've talked about how Italy got just hammered with COVID-19. There are 2 teams that are based out of Italy. I mean, you've got AlphaTauri and Ferrari. In terms of America, obviously Haas F1 is based out of there. There are 3 British teams, McLaren, Racing Point, and Williams. And even Williams, they've got enough financial stress to worry about. Now they've got COVID-19 to worry about as well in their own country, their home base. It's really not a good time to be. It's tough being a motorsports fan right now. I think we can all say that, because you want to get back to racing, but you also want to protect the health and safety of everyone there. And the way the position these teams are in right now, and it doesn't matter. It's Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR. It doesn't matter. Everyone is being affected by this. And
I'll add on to that. Oh, go ahead.
And it's just, I was just going to say, it's a tough time, and everyone's in a really difficult financial situation, or some more so than others.
And the point I was going to make on that is if you're the reason why motorsports is in a lot tougher of a situation. Yes, as we are trying to get back to racing, every esport out there is, but out of the professional teams, you don't see every team out there looking at financial trouble, wondering if they're going to fold. You're not looking at the Chicago Cubs and wondering if they're going to be around next season, if and when they get to play. They will be back when baseball comes back. You look at a team like San Jose, the Sharks. They will be back when things get back to normal. Motorsports is different. Motorsports, there are teams going in and out. It's not like there's a safety net out there for teams. There's not going to be. It all relies on the sponsorship money. It's a revolving door of teams coming in and out, and more teams are coming out than they're coming in and now. But that's where a lot of the motorsports fans are concerned, because as with a professional sports team in every other sport, they're going to be back once this thing is over. 99% of them are going to be back in some form, way, or capacity. There's a good chance motorsports teams are not coming back next year. It's very likely we're going to lose several teams across F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, Supercross, NHRA, the World of Outlaws, Tony Stewart's or its All-Star Circuit. Every single motorsports group is going to be severely affected by this already. And this is part of the reason why NASCAR is trying to get back. This is the reason why F1 is trying to get back. It's because they know, if they don't race, they're not making money.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. In fact, you mentioned big teams leaving. There was something that I remembered from just earlier this week. We hardly talk about it, but in the Deutsche Masters Tourenwagen series, Audi, one of the biggest manufacturers in that series, they announced that they're pulling out after this year because they're not making money right now, and it's a shame because Audi is big representative, a big manufacturer over there in DTM. And with Audi leaving, it's going to be a big it's going to be a big void to fill. So obviously manufacturers, teams, they're all being affected by this. So fingers crossed again that the teams will be able to find a way to make some money. No one gets infected. And with these races starting back up, here's to hoping that curve of COVID-19 goes down even further. Because, I mean, there have been talks that they've hit the peak and that we're trying to take the curve down. I can barely talk tonight. I apologize. But it's hopefully they'll be able to get some races in. Because that's what we all know and love is good old-fashioned, hard, clean racing with some occasional wrecks every now and then. Nothing too serious, though. So, a couple more things that I want to talk about real quick. Obviously, we just mentioned the latest F1 schedule changes. There's really one other one that I noticed. Carlos Sainz, who drives for McLaren, we talked about him earlier, but he's rumored to be going to Ferrari in 2021. And if racing gets back underway, this is going to be something to keep in mind because Carlos Sainz, the very popular Spaniard driver, has been rumored to go to Ferrari for next season. He would almost certainly be replacing Sebastian Vettel if he does end up going to Ferrari. With Carlos Sainz, just to look at his statistics, last year that he had with McLaren was a career season for the Spaniard. I'll be sure to look up his statistics here. In fact, I'll go ahead and share the screen right now. This is courtesy of racingreference.info. In my opinion, one of the most reliable sites for motorsports. So here you go. Even though it doesn't look impressive right away, because no podiums for a long time until you get to here in 2019. This was his first season for McLaren. He scored his first career podium at Interlagos from dead last on the grid. And he finishes third for McLaren and had several finishes inside the points. Last year was his highest finish ever in the point standings at 6th. That was good enough to give McLaren, with the help of Lando Norris in addition, they scored 4th in the Constructors' title. We saw Charles Leclerc when he first entered the sport with Sauber and Alfa Romeo, their joint effort. He did really well. He outperformed this is going to sound terrible, but how slow that equipment was. He took that Sauber equipment and did really well with it, considering how limited the equipment was. That ended up giving him his ride with Ferrari. And, I mean, we saw what Leclerc did last year. Just really, really impressive from the Monaco native. So, with Sebastian Vettel and his recent struggles, and Hal and I talked a lot about this during the first semester we did this show, about how Vettel, he seemed to be losing his edge a little. Do you think Carlos Sainz takes over the seat, Hal Leastep?
I think it's highly likely. If the season gets underway, this should first of all light a fire under Sebastian Vettel. There should already be a fire under that man. He struggled so much last year, just compared to his previous performance and the equipment he's in. I like that they're going with new blood because he's, again, another young guy. Charles Leclerc is only 22. Carlos Sainz Jr. is 25. 24. Either way, mid-20s. These are two young guys who have a point to prove that they're the new guys who are going to run this sport. And Sebastian Vettel is an old dog, and it's time for him to show why he is held on this pedestal of why I think it's disappointing he is where he is. Why it's disappointing how he hasn't performed well at all. He's going to need to do that because it's going to be a question of after he loses this ride, if he does to Sainz, which I think if he keeps up what he did last year, he will. Where does he want to go after that?
I feel like in Vettel's situation, I'm not sure where else he could go. I mean, he could become a journeyman like Kimi Räikkönen has and go to someplace like Alfa Romeo or I mean, I don't think he would want to go back to a place like Red Bull or Toro Rosso, considering he's already been there. You know, he's already been successful with them. Maybe if he wants to recapture the magic, go back to Red Bull. But I don't think Mercedes really one looking to go after someone like Vettel. But I pulled up the results from last year, the results from the 2019 F1 season. Notice how Sebastian Vettel only has one victory and came at the Singapore Grand Prix at the Marina Bay Street Circuit. And if we look at the standings, I think he still finished pretty high in the standings, but he was fifth. He was fifth in the final standings with only one victory and 9 podiums. He was outpaced by his teammate, who was a first-year guy there. At least I believe Charles Leclerc was a first-year driver for Ferrari, because his rookie season was the year before, I believe. Yeah, because 2018 he drove for Sauber and was 13th in the points. So for Vettel to be outpaced right away by his younger teammate in Charles Leclerc, I mean, it shows that I feel like Vettel's age is starting to get to him. Because if you look at Sebastian Vettel, if this thing will work, yeah, Sebastian Vettel is, I mean, he's born in 1987, so he's 32, which, I mean, it's still, obviously, it's pretty young, but I would say it's starting to get past the prime age of an F1 driver. I mean, we saw Nico Rosberg retire when he was I think it was 29 when he retired. That was right after winning an F1 championship. So, I mean, Sebastian Vettel, he clearly hasn't been the Vettel that was just the dominant force at the start of last decade from 2010 to 2013. With Leclerc outpacing him, and if Vettel doesn't do well this season, that ride might be Carlos Sainz's ride for the taking. Justin Palmer, what do you think?
I almost am starting to get Kurt Busch vibes from it, because as last year he really wasn't racing for his ride. I think, and you always have to have that light pressure of every year's a contract year, and you gotta perform every single year, or you're out on that racetrack. And last year he clearly did not perform to his standards, so he's definitely lasted it a lot longer. 32 is it's 32. Oh, it's not like NASCAR or 32. Well, guys in his prime, 32 in F1, and the driver's kind of on the downhill. Oh, as new blood is coming in, and keep in mind, there's only a limited amount of rides there, so you either need to prove yourself, or you're going to get removed very quickly. So, again, I really hope that he could get back to his former self and he can put up a fight for that ride. However, there are definitely sharks in the water ready if he's not up to the task.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that for sure. So, Sebastian Vettel could potentially, I mean, with Carlos Sainz, if he does really well and Vettel struggles, considering he's in Ferrari equipment the way he did last year, yeah, Sainz could be in that ride. It'll be interesting to see what happens if they get underway, if they do end up racing this season, which even then, it's kind of a question. But enough doom and gloom. We've talked enough. We've already gotten depressed enough about how bad the pandemic is. So what do you say we make some picks for the weekend in iRacing events, shall we?
Let's do it.
So let's start with the IndyCar iRacing Challenge event that will be happening. It is the First Responder 175 at Virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So yes, there are 33 cars on the entry list, as you can see. We have obviously the Penske gang with Newgarden, Power. I do not see Scott McLaughlin on. Oh, wait, never mind. There he is. He's car number 40. Just about thought, wait, something's not right here. You see Ward Askew. I know that Lando Norris was also on here. Yeah, there he is in the 04. Elio Castroneves driving a 911 car. That'll be interesting. Actually, no, that makes sense because of the first responder theme. You got Connor Daly driving for Carlin in their virtual car. Felipe Nasser was in the 31 last week. James Davison is in this event in the 33 for Birds, Jonathan Bird's team. Dalton Kellett, Alex Palou, Max Chilton driving an oval virtually, even though he won't do it in real life, considering he's quit oval racing. You see Ed Carpenter and Renus VK. Just the average IndyCar grid, basically. And you see Ryan Hunter-Reay is in this race as well. Ryan Hunter-Reay will be driving. There's also Marco Andretti's there. Lando Norris. You got Stephen Wilson and Scott Speed also. They're on the entry list, but their teams right now aren't known at this time. So let's go ahead and start. It's just basically random picks at this point, but Hal Leestep, I'll start with you. 33 drivers. Out of these 33, which one do you have winning at Indy?
Give me the 3-time Indy 500 winner, Elio Castroneves, to win this. Just he's won at the track, okay?
Yep. Elio, 3-time winner of the event, still looking for number 4. Justin Palmer, your pick.
Part of me thinks that the invasion is going to continue. Right now, the IndyCar guys are getting absolutely beaten up by the guys who are coming in on the iRacing circuits who have been there for a while and also represent other series in different sports. So I'm going to go with Scott Speed as a surprise winner for this 500.
All right, Scott Speed, the global former rallycross driver, who also happened to get banned from iRacing at one point in time. Interesting story to read up on.
Whoops.
I forgot to mention R.C. Enerson. That's a name we haven't heard in a long time. He's driving for Top Gun Racing. Enerson, former Indy Lights competitor, has run a few IndyCar races in the past. Just interesting to note there.
He's entering the danger zone.
Yep. Now I got to think, who am I going to pick out of this grid? It's also enticing because part of me wants to lean towards the guys who I know are good at iRacing, guys like Sage Karam. But it's just hard to pick one. And trying to think. Part of me also wants to go with Lando Norris, considering how well he did and how much he's done really well concerning when it comes to iRacing. But you know what? I think I'll pick kind of a sentimental favorite. I'm going Stephen Wilson. If you remember in 2016, Stephen Wilson drove, or not 2016, it was well, he did run the 500 in 2016, but in 2018, it was Stephen who drove a 5th car for Andretti Autosport. This was about 2.5 years after his older brother, Justin Wilson, was killed in a crash at Pocono in 2015. Stephen, carrying his brother's number 25, was just basically 4 or 5 laps away from winning the Indy 500, but his car ran out of fuel, and he had to bring it in the pits. It was a pit gamble that didn't quite pay off. But for Wilson, even if it's a virtual race at Indy, it'd be something really special, especially for the Wilson family. So we've made our picks. Hal is picking Elio Castroneves. Justin Palmer has gone with Scott Speed, and I'm picking Stephen Wilson. Basically, 3 non-regular drivers in IndyCar. Should be fun to watch tomorrow. So now we go to the NASCAR side. They are running their race at Dover, virtual Dover International Raceway, the Monster Mile. You got the invited race entries with basically most of the guys, excuse me, most of the guys you'll find on a average Cup grid, I mean, aside from Ross Chastain still driving the 6 car, Dale Jr. in the 8, trying to find any other outstanding changes. Bobby Labonte in the 19 again. Tyler Reddick in the 31. You got Corey LaJoie in there as well. Any other changes? J.J. Yaley in the 52. That's interesting.
And
Daniel
the castle.
back. So, should be fun to watch. Out of these 3, let's see. Not 3. Race scheduled for 150 laps. Drivers will get 1 reset. So, last week's top 3 finishers, which were Bowman, LaJoie, and Preece, they'll start at the rear, and the top 10 qualifiers are expected to be inverted. So, should be fun to watch. Hal Leestep, your pick for Sunday's race at Virtual Dover.
Clint Boyer has now tasted what it's like to lead a lap in iRacing. And I think he's going to go out there and he's going to lead the majority of this race, only to get stuck behind somebody, smack into the back of their car, and then proceed to fall back into the pack. And, of course, the 24 car will win. William Byron will win. It's Dover. This is not a super speedway.
I almost thought you were going to say Boyer was going to win it. You
got to Boyer it up.
You had me there in the first half, not going to lie. Justin Farmer, your pick.
You took my pick, but I got to ask you something. Who's the guy who knocks them out? Would it happen to be a surprising driver from the number 50 Money Team Racing?
I was just about to bring up, because we haven't – I'm sorry I forgot about this. There was not a Money Team update in the calendar, but we can squeeze one in here now. Hal, any news?
I'm typing as fast as I can. Just as I suspected, no. There's Floyd, give me some news. Like, call me up anytime you want, Mr. Mayweather. I need a scoop on this story.
Yeah. Well, so we really didn't miss out on much. Anyway, Justin, back to your pick.
No, we did. And I'm just going to go with Timmy Hill. Oh, seems like the obvious thing to do since he did not finish in the top 3. He will probably be starting close towards the front. Give me Timmy Hill to win this one.
I'm correct. Timmy Hill, I mean, he's from kind of that area, not Delaware, but he is from kind of that region of America. I think Maryland, if I'm correct on that.
I believe you are correct on that.
Let's see. For my pick, it's going to be so tough to choose. Because I could go for a seasoned veteran like Busch, Keselowski, not Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, Chastain, even Junior, considering him. But, I don't know.
Maryland.
Yeah, I don't know. I could go for Truex. I probably would pick Truex, but, he's not in this race. So let me go with somebody who I know has done pretty well at Dover in the past. Old 7 time.
I knew someone was going to pick that.
Jimmy Johnson. That's my pick. And hopefully he'll have the iRacing thing nailed down. And if he doesn't, well, it'll just be some great comedy to enjoy. So that's the show pretty much.
One more quick prediction. Over or under 1 wreck for Clint Boyer?
Over. Easily over.
Over.
I'll take a push. I'll take the push.
All right. Well then, that basically concludes the show tonight. Hal, Justin, any last words before we go off? No? Nothing from Hal. Justin?
16 days till racing.
Fingers crossed no one gets infected.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything. This is sailing off into something weird. So, yeah.
For all of the bad talk we did tonight about NASCAR returning, and when the green flag waves at Darlington, hopefully that gets all tossed aside and we will have our normal ish NASCAR or shenanigans going on for hopefully the remainder of the season without a hitch.
Hallelujah. Let's cross our fingers and hope for the best. Because I'll be honest, I would really, really love to start talking about some actual racing again. So with that, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Burnin Rubber, the socially distanced edition. Thank you all for watching or listening from wherever you are around the country. Until next time, the guy down below on the screen below me is Hal Eastep. The guy to my right is Justin Palmer. And I am Sterling Siemens. Until the next time, I'm Sterling Siemens, signing off.